The year was 1241, and the winds of change were howling across the vast plains of Europe. The Mongols, an unstoppable force led by the formidable Batu Khan, had already left their mark on Eastern Europe, spreading fear and destruction wherever they went. In their sights was the Kingdom of Hungary, a powerful state in Central Europe. On April 11, 1241, near the banks of the Sajo River, the Mongols and the Hungarian army were about to clash in one of the most decisive battles in medieval history. It would be a day of terror, triumph, and tragedy, a day that would echo through the ages. The Mongols had already built an empire that stretched from the steppes of Mongolia to the gates of China. Under the leadership of Genghis Khan, they had conquered much of Asia. Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, was appointed to lead the Mongol forces in the west. His mission was clear: subjugate Europe. The Mongol strategy was ruthless and terrifying. They used a combination of speed, surprise, and psychological warfare to overwhelm their enemies. Their army was a force of nature, moving quickly across vast distances, striking hard, and then disappearing just as swiftly. The Mongols did not engage in traditional sieging methods. Instead, they preferred to devastate their enemies with shock and awe, breaking their will to fight long before the final blow was struck. Batu Khan's forces, numbering perhaps as many as 100,000 men, began their invasion of Europe in 1236, targeting the Kingdom of Poland, the Kievan Rus, and eventually Hungary. They swept through these regions with terrifying speed, leaving behind burning villages, decimated armies, and terrified populations. The Mongols were relentless, and their reputation alone often caused whole cities to surrender without a fight. But it was Hungary that would face the full brunt of Batu's wrath. At the time of the Mongol invasion, Hungary was a relatively powerful kingdom in Central Europe, ruled by King Bela IV. A member of the Arpad dynasty, Bela had ascended the throne in 1235 after the death of his brother, King Andrew II. Bela's reign had initially been marked by internal instability, but by 1241, Hungary was beginning to recover from the tumult of the previous decades. Hungary's location, at the crossroads of Eastern and Western Europe, made it both a strategic prize and a vulnerable target. The Mongols, who had already raided the Kingdom of Poland and parts of the Kievan Rus, turned their attention to Hungary in 1241. Their invasion was not just a military campaign, it was a statement of Mongol dominance in the west. King Bela IV, aware of the Mongol threat, attempted to prepare for the inevitable invasion. However, his forces, though sizable, were no match for the Mongol army's mobility, organization, and brutal efficiency. Bela attempted to rally his nobles, raise levies, and fortify Hungary's defenses. The Mongols were a force unlike anything the kingdom had ever faced. In the early months of 1241, Batu Khan's forces began their push into Hungary, advancing with astonishing speed across the plains of Eastern Europe. The Hungarian army, under Bela's command, made a series of hasty preparations to defend the kingdom. The Hungarian king sent messengers to his allies in the west, hoping for reinforcements, but his calls for help went largely unanswered. The European powers, embroiled in their own struggles and politics, could not provide the support that Hungary so desperately needed. The Mongols, meanwhile, employed their signature tactics of feigned retreats and surprise raids to bait the Hungarian army into a series of traps. They were masters of psychological warfare, and they understood that fear was often a greater weapon than steel. By the time the two armies were poised to meet at Mohi, the Mongols had already outmaneuvered the Hungarians and neutralized any advantage the kingdom might have had. The Battle of Mohi took place on April 11, 1241, near the Sajo River in central Hungary. The Hungarian forces, led by King Bela IV, were composed of knights, foot soldiers, and militia from across the kingdom. Despite their size, estimates suggest that the Hungarian army numbered between 20,000 and 30,000 men. They were unprepared for the Mongol onslaught. Batu Khan's Mongol army, with its estimated strength of around 100,000 men, was a completely different beast. The Mongols' cavalry, which was composed of highly trained horsemen armed with bows, spears, and swords, was their greatest strength. Mongol tactics were based on speed, coordination, and flexibility. Their light cavalry could outpace any enemy and harass them from a distance with deadly accuracy. The battle began with the Mongols using their classic tactic of feigned retreat. Batu Khan's forces withdrew from the battlefield in what appeared to be a disorganized and desperate retreat. The Hungarians, eager to engage, took the bait and charged after the retreating Mongols, thinking they had broken the Mongol line. However, this was exactly what the Mongols had wanted. As the Hungarian forces pursued, they were lured into a trap. The Mongols, who had been hiding behind a series of natural obstacles, suddenly turned around and launched a devastating counterattack. Mongol cavalry encircled the Hungarian forces, attacking from all sides. The Hungarians, caught off guard and unable to maneuver in the cramped terrain, were overwhelmed by the sheer force and speed of the Mongol assault. The battle turned into a massacre. The Hungarian cavalry, which had once been one of Europe's finest, was decimated. The Hungarian infantry, unable to match the mobility of the Mongol horsemen, was quickly cut down. King Bala IV himself barely escaped the battle, fleeing into the nearby forests to avoid capture. The Mongols had achieved a stunning victory, one that would have far-reaching consequences for Hungary and the rest of Europe. The Mongol victory at Mohi was devastating for Hungary. The kingdom's defenses collapsed, and much of the countryside was ravaged by the invaders. The Mongols, however, did not remain in Hungary for long. After the battle, Batu Khan's forces moved on to other territories, leaving behind a trail of destruction in their wake. Despite the scale of the defeat, the Mongols' impact on Hungary was not as permanent as it might have been. Shortly after the battle, Batu Khan's attention was diverted by other concerns, including the political instability in the Mongol Empire and the death of the great Khan Ogedai in 1241. Batu Khan, as a loyal grandson, was recalled to the Mongol heartlands, and the Mongol invasion of Hungary effectively ended. However, Hungary was left in ruins, and the scars of the battle would remain for generations. King Bela IV, although defeated, was not without resolve. In the aftermath of the invasion, he began rebuilding his kingdom, fortifying its cities, and strengthening its military defenses. He also implemented reforms to ensure that Hungary would never again be so vulnerable to foreign invasion. While the Mongols had devastated Hungary, they had not broken the spirit of the kingdom or its king. The Battle of Mohi marked a turning point in European history. It was a moment when the Mongol Empire's power and reach were fully realized in the West. For the people of Hungary, it was a day of loss and horror, but for the broader European world, it was a reminder of the threat that the Mongols posed. In the years that followed, the memory of the Mongol invasion lingered in the minds of Europeans. It shaped the military strategies of the time, and the fear of Mongol invasion prompted greater cooperation between European states as they sought to protect themselves from further Mongol incursions. While the Mongol Empire would eventually decline, the legacy of Mohi and the Mongol invasion would continue to shape the course of European history. The battle demonstrated the power of the Mongols, but it also revealed the vulnerabilities of European kingdoms that had grown complacent in their strength. In the end, the Battle of Mohi was not just a victory for the Mongols, it was a wake-up call for Europe. It was a reminder that the world was changing, that the old ways of warfare and diplomacy were no longer enough to keep the Mongols at bay. And for the Kingdom of Hungary, it was a bitter lesson in the price of complacency and a story of resilience and recovery in the face of overwhelming odds. The Battle of Mohi remains one of the most significant and chilling moments in the history of the Mongol Empire's expansion into Europe. It is a testament to the military genius of the Mongols, the tragedy of Hungary's defeat, and the resilience of a kingdom that would not be easily broken. Though the battle itself was over in a matter of hours, its consequences reverberated across the centuries, shaping the future of Europe in ways that are still felt today. For the Hungarian people, Mohi was a day of defeat, but also a day that inspired a determination to rebuild and recover. For Europe, it was a warning of the power that lay in the East, and a reminder that the world was not as safe as it once seemed.